Hi everyone, it's great to see you. Today's video is going to be a little bit different in that we're going to look at the progression of some of the plants in my yard from when I first planted them this spring to where they're at right now. So let's start with the mandevilla planters that I have on my back deck. You can tell on the far left picture here, this is the initial planting. So these are the raspberry kiss mandevilla. I love them. They're kind of a reddish pink, and the flowers are a little smaller than my other mandevilla. And underneath this, I planted sweet potato vine and bacopa. Now you can tell in the middle picture here, this was midsummer in its glory here, that it has a ton of blossoms on the mandevilla. The sweet potato vine is filling in, and for a while the bacopa kept up. I have to say though, as you can tell in the final picture here, that the sweet potato vine just really has drowned out the bacopa, which is fine. I love how it looks with the sweet potato vine on the bottom. It doesn't have quite as many blossoms right now, but I'm finding with all of my mandevilla, they kind of cycle through their blossoming time. So they'll get a big flush and then those sort of drop off. We have still flowers, but not quite as many. And then we get another bigger flush. I also think that being late in the season, they're due for some more fertilizer here, but you can tell that the flowers have grown quite far up on the stakes that I have in for them, and they're really looking good. They add some height to the planters on the deck, which is really nice. This is another planter that I have on the deck in the center. I have wee bit giddy hydrangea, and this is one that's in a bag. So this is a bag in the pot method. And when I originally planted it over here on the left, it has leafed out. That hydrangea was kept in the shed through the winter, and then I added it back in. It's underplanted with Supertunia jazzberry and more sweet potato vine. And I really like this. Now, when the hydrangea was in bloom, it was fabulous. Lots of color. Wee Bit Giddy does great for me. The jazzberry was peeking out. Really, really nice and bright and cheerful. Right now, the hydrangea, of course, is past. So in the far right picture here, I've trimmed off the blossoms. They were starting to look really faded and brown. The sweet potato vine is doing fabulously, and the jazzberry is hanging in there. It's peeking out. It's giving a little color. Yes, the sweet potato vine does tend to overwhelm it, but I still like having the jazzberry there for that little bit of extra. This urn is in the front in my driveway, and oh my goodness, take a look at this picture on the left. So this is when I had some leftover pieces of the stained glass hosta that I had divided, and they were looking a little worse for wear. We had some lemon coral sedum, we had a leftover few pieces of creeping Jenny, and we had some of the New Guinea impatiens, the sun patience, sorry, not the New Guineas. And boy, they filled in beautifully, and that hosta really bounced back. So you have midsummer, you have the currant and the far right. These sun patients are fabulous. I am so impressed with them. Love how the lemon coral sedum is spilling over. You can see one little strand of creeping Jenny. It's around the back, but it is still doing well. So I'm really pleased to see how this one came back and looks so good. And in this picture, you can see the warm and cool planters that I did. So on the left, we have sun patience underplanted with the creeping Jenny. And then on the right, we have the angel wings in the center with the Supertunia tiara blue and the dichondra silver falls just spilling over. And they looked pretty full to begin with, but they did a beautiful job filling in. I think the thing I noticed most about these are my Supertunias, late in the season, they are not blooming as much now, but the trailers are just doing amazingly and they're trailing down to the ground. I love how they look. I'm hoping if I give that boost of fertilizer, this was a good reminder to me that this time of year, it's worth adding in that extra fertilizer as you go along to keep up those beautiful blossoms. At the beginning of the season from Proven Winners, I had ordered Glow Stick, which is the new type of holly that they have out. It grows really, really tall, like a sky pencil holly. But the new growth on this one is supposed to be really, really bright limey yellow. And that's why they call it glow stick. So on the left, here it is when I unboxed it, and it didn't have a lot of that really bright color. So I have to admit, I was a little worried. But then you see the picture in the middle, and on the far right, it hasn't grown that much taller, but its new growth is that really, really bright color. I ended up putting it in a planter that I have on the deck that's filled with annuals just so I could keep an eye on it. And I'm going to leave it there for a year or two. It's not taking off in height, but it is getting there. It looks healthy and I love the color. I think that down the road, this is going to be one of my favorites. Now in the front, of course, I have the big urns, and boy, you can tell on the left picture here that when I first planted up this planter, the New Guinea impatiens, which I believe these are actually sun patients, and they're white, they were looking rather droopy. Then on the picture over on the right here, they've perked up. It's just a couple days later. So when I first planted it, you can tell the creeping Jenny isn't going over the edge very far, but it did perk up pretty quickly and things are looking beautiful. I love this mandevilla with the bright pink here. And we also have the Supertunia tiara blue. So that's trailing nicely. And then as we got later in the season, it really took off. The sun patients, the white, just got so much taller and covered sort of the leggy bottom of the mandevilla, which was perfect. The Super Tunia Tiara blues are just going for it. I've been pretty good about keeping the fertilizing up on these urns, and boy, you can really tell a difference. And the creeping Jenny, I've already trimmed it back twice and it's still all the way to the ground. They are spectacular. Now, the mandevilla cycles in and out of how many blossoms it has. In the far right, you can tell though how much taller it's gotten, and it still is throwing out buds, and it will continue to do that until frost. Here is one of the urns that I planted up by our front door, which is in complete shade, and it started to suffer. So this is a stained glass hosta, a tuberous begonia, a creeping jenny, and Aurelia sun king. The Aurelia Sun King is still there. It is on the far side. It did get eaten a little bit, but it's still there doing fine. You can tell in the right-hand picture that the creeping Jenny is now trailing on the ground. It's grown quite a bit. And the hosta did really well, even though it was in full shade. So I've pulled these out from the doorway. So they're on the first level of stair right now, so that they can get sun for a few days before I move them back. I just think it needs that to perk it up a little bit. The tuberous begonias did stop blooming, and that's just because they need more sun than no sun. This is what I called my butterfly planter. So we have some licorice plant here. We have some beautiful star pentas, some petunias, and they have really come in gorgeously. You know, the pentas really have taken off. I've seen butterflies at these. The petunias are looking good. For all of these planters with the petunias, I have had to be vigilant about spraying them with BT because they do get eaten pretty readily in my yard otherwise. So once a week, I've been doing that. So we're going to end with these two beautiful planters. Look at how they have grown. When I originally planted the big planters in the backyard, I had the mandevilla in the center and I underplanted it with the Rocapulco double impatiens. But when those double impatiens went in, they did not have any blossoms and they were very short and tiny. I also put the Broalia underneath and the creeping Jenny, which was beautiful, but it certainly wasn't trailing very far. And over time, boy, they have just gotten amazing. The double impatiens, the Racapulcos, are doing great. They've gotten so tall. It's worked really, really well to cover the bottom of the mandevilla. The Browalia is blooming, but I think my favorite thing is this creeping Jenny that just is trailing now into the grass to look like a beautiful skirt around these two planters. I love them. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video.